Good point though. Um, hold on. Okay, so going back to what we just talked about, I think that I'm trying to see if we got through them all. Provide recommendations on send both. Okay, yeah, so we got through them all. So that's again, this is a list of things that I think we should be doing. Um, we can trying to see the best use of time. We can let's go over everything first, but just know at some point, whether it's at the next meeting, I think in order to figure out strategies and objectives for some of the goals, which we'll talk about next, we probably need to break up in some working groups, unless we want to have some working meetings where we discuss each one and then go from there. We may want to break up into working groups that can find time between meetings to meet, and then at the next meeting they come back with ideas with different objectives for different goals that we set. We'll figure that out later. The council member Harris.
I was just gonna say, if we can put this document in a Google Drive type where everybody can work on it at their pace and, keep working with notes and things on the side to help us then be able to come back together and see. So kind of like the comments and memos that
For
gives
sure.
everybody the opportunity to work on it when it hits their mind, and then
Yep.
we come back together.
Yeah, we'll make sure. Tammy and I'll make sure that we create a maybe a Google folder that we can share out to all the members, and we can add this as a document in that folder. Perfect. Okay. So I think for the sake of time, it's already 8:30. We won't answer any of these questions now, but just know at some point, and again, we might be able to do it through the Google Doc as well as working groups or have kind of working committee meetings. But develop and maintaining NWE directory just needs to understand what we want to see on that list. The status reports. When are we going to give the annual status reports to council, and how and what information will be shared? Do we want to share? Propose realistic goals for addressing underutilization. Again, I think that's this annual work plan, and identify and assess the needs of the NWEB community on a regular basis. Again, how do we want to do a survey, or is there another strategy? And then review economic development committee agenda, et cetera. And it sounds like my question was, should we? And it sounds like there's enough support to do that. Moving forward to goals. So again, I tried to make these as broad as possible so that I did not prescribe strategies, and sometimes goals and strategies can kind of leak into one another and feel and look the same. And so I tried to be as broad as possible. But again, we can add to this, we can reduce the goals, or we can take on all of them. So the first goal that I'm gonna put into the chat is position Evanston's NWEB committee as a leader in NWEB advocacy in Evanston. I put that on there because I don't think we are right now. I don't think if you asked, a kind of typical NWEB committee, especially one that was outside of the bubble, if they know anything about the NWEB committee, if they know we even exist, they probably don't. I would say most of them probably don't even know we exist. And then if they do they understand, how we're providing a valuable support for their business. And so I think there are some things that we can do if we decide that that is a goal that we want to take on next year, end of this year, yet next year. I think there are things that we can do to better position ourselves to be a leader in NWB advocacy, or whatever we want to call it. Some quick notes that I had, website, and we'll share this on that Google Doc, but we can, develop a website potentially that talks about our purpose for the committee that highlights past successes, current priorities, et cetera. We can host more in-person and virtual events, et cetera. So that's one of the goals that we could take on. Another one is, let me put it in the chat. Michael, did you want to make a comment on that one?
Yeah, I think that is a critically important goal. And it's something that I think we've been trying to move closer to. But I mean, just certain little things, like even the website you mentioned. and this came up actually on a focus group for the business district consultants that are doing the work now, as well with the arts with a bunch of arts participants in the community. They have a page online, but it's static and useless, and we have a page online and it's almost static and almost useless, and it looks like every other page on the city council website. And we went through this before several years ago. I think that we have to break out of, like, we can't just be like another page of 150 blue pages blue and gray pages on Evanston's like infinite website of useless information. So not only that, it's hard to find even on the website. So on top of that goal, I would recommend that we have an independent website that could possibly function as a real calling card to the community that we serve, as well as a tool with a database and a search engine like a Annie's List or something that has up-to-date commercial entity information for people to search for MBE, WBE, local businesses within our, under our supervision. Right. Yep. So that because there was a point back in 2019 when we were gearing up to build the assisted living, where we were determined to hire 10 people locally, and the list and the list was from 2013.
Yeah.
So I fully encourage everybody to think that technology and websites and presence and availability and transparency all go with that technology. And the current City of Evanston website, I don't think can ever be sufficient or Webverse, that entire net of the thing. I don't think that can be sufficient to actually accomplish these goals that would then really transform our ability to communicate to the public.
Yeah, and I wish Nathan was here because he's working on, he's our workforce development coordinator, and he's working to develop a more dynamic and user-friendly website for the work that he's doing. And I think he said he's using something called Rise, which is a kind of website platform and software, I believe. And so there might be a way that we can that we might be able to get a page through Rise, and what Nathan is working on that provides some of those features that you just mentioned, Michael. So that's definitely something that we can work on.
Yeah, I'm not a tech guy, so I have no idea how to accomplish it. So I
no, but I think
others
you're onto something though. Yeah. I think you're onto something. Jared.
I want to let Councilmember Harris and then Angela go. They've had their hand up longer than I did.
Sorry, I never
Harris,
put
I didn't know if you had your hand up from before. Did you have something?
So no, mine was commenting on this as well. Angela, you did have your hand up earlier, or was that was from earlier?
I do, but please go ahead, Jared.
So I was just going to comment the same thing really that Michael is saying, is that I think this is an essential part of our existence. I mean, I'm really probably, as a lot of people, and even as you probably are, Councilmember Burns, surprised that this is actually a topic of conversation. This is something that should kind of be already woven into the fabric of what we do. And I just want to ask, in my infinite ignorance, really, I don't know if this has already been talked about or if this is something that is not necessarily doable right now. But from what I understood from my experience with listening to a couple of different presentations with the Evanston eLink Marketplace that Bryant Wallace brought to us a few years ago, that would be one of the essential functions, I would think. And aside from that, I mean, as you're saying, Councilmember Burns and Mike, if we're able to go ahead and build this out to what we think it should be to serve the community that way, at the very least, having a link to that as a resource. I don't know where the talks are with that. I don't know what the utilization is with that. I've heard that Evanston Community Foundation is using it and implementing it. I've heard that Northwestern University, I don't know if the city is as well, but it just seems like I said, from what I've heard about that particular engine, it would solve a lot of it would actually go right along with a lot of the things that we're talking about that are issues. Do you have anything to say about that, or can you comment on that at all? Anybody on this call?
Yeah, I know I talked to Clarence about it not too long ago, and he said he scheduled a meeting with City Manager Stowe. They spoke, and at my biweekly meeting I have with Luke Stowe, our city manager, I'll make sure to bring it up to see what came of that meeting, and I'll talk to Clarence as well.
Just a little background on that is my understanding was that that program, that system, was set up for purchasing itself. So really the core purchasing department of the city, buying big mass bulk, kind of things and smaller things. But it was not geared towards like contractors, service providers, and other groups that were not technically like a purchasing type entity. Like if I don't, for example, they order 50,000 rolls of toilet paper a year for all of our civic buildings, whatever that might be. It's like more of that type of role. It was my understanding, and it sounded really interesting if people were using it. But it wasn't, my recollection was it wasn't set up for the primary people that we deal with, which are these contractors and service providers, for these RFPs. So maybe Clarence could, let us know if there's a way to tweak it, the technology to further classify groups on how to do that.
And also we can figure we still have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of website is one of the strategies I listed out. Obviously, doing more in-person and virtual events is another strategy. Once we decide our strategy, and it sounds like developing some type of website and online presence will be one of them. We can decide if the NWEBE site is more informational and focused on our committee and our efforts, and then it links out to other websites, right? Or whether or not we want to develop it into a kind of a fully functioning website that provides some of those things. My guess is that I think there are, between Rise and between the site that Jared is talking about, we may be able to link to those. But more so what I'm saying is that I think this committee just needs an online presence that may feature different links, but where people understand who we are individually as well, right? There should be a website that has even our photos on it and of the current committee members who are serving, our backgrounds, what we're focusing on, upcoming meetings, links, to participate in the meetings if it's a virtual meeting, information about the committee itself. We'll do one more comment on this because it's 6:43. I know we have everybody at least till 7:20. I want to make sure we can get through all the goals. But Angela.
Yes, I was going to bring up Clarence as well, so I'm glad that was discussed. And I think Councilmember Burns, you just summarized nicely. We can be a repository of resources. We don't necessarily have to do everything ourselves. I think there's a lot of people working in this space that we could help really connect and again do the advocacy that I think is our purpose.
Perfect. Okay, so the next goal that I put in the chat, which which also may relate to what Clarence and Jared and others are working on. At least one of the strategies could, but increase local firms that provide goods and services the city needs. And doing some research, something that I found, I don't quite know what it is yet, but I think it has a lot to do with what again, the website that Jared mentioned, and then especially in the way Michael described it, but is to either create or renew. I don't know if we have something like this, a supplier diversity program. it doesn't seem like we have that now. I've done some research on it. I think we may have elements of it, but not a fully kind of thought out and comprehensive supplier diversity program that really proactively that looks at what we need to do to get NWEB people providing goods and services, and whatever those barriers are, that we're identifying them and addressing them, and we're aggressively looking to address them so that the next year, hopefully, we can increase the amount of NWEB businesses that are working with the city.
Now,
And go ahead, Michael.
on that note, when I first joined, I joined during the pandemic, so nothing was happening, but everyone was talking about trying to do these in-person information sessions, job type sessions where we would have, they were having like in-person meetings for MWEBE businesses to come and learn about the opportunities for purchasing, how to register for purchasing, with purchasing rather, because you have to be like registered, right? And then how to get their certification and those types of things where there's a physical presence and somebody could walk into the room, at 7 o'clock on a Monday night and 7, whatever it might be, to help our local businesses take that next step. I actually think the city has grown in its resources, particularly with Nate taking over workforce development as an official thing, because that wasn't there 3 years ago either. That maybe some of that has been kind of worked through other groups, but there was some sort of symposium or some sort of job fair-ish thing that physically we could have either in each ward or one big one, but bringing it to each ward, I think, may be more beneficial and equitable to people who can't get downtown at night or whatever. To think about doing those in person, like we're listening. If you need help, here's what you do. If you need this, here's what you do. These are our requirements. 25% of our contracts have to go X and 25 have to go Y. So get in there, figure it out.
I think the supplier program is more about there are products and services that the city, purchases and uses on a regular basis. And so I think it might include, people that the bidding and contracting, the infrastructure work that we do, but also just the supplies that we purchase on a regular basis, making sure that those are NWEB businesses. And what I would even say, I know we say NWEBE, my thing is EBE that are women owned and minority owned. I would love to see a lot of that work go to Evanston-based business enterprises that are women-owned and minority-owned. So we'll create working groups to once we determine what the strategy is, because again the goal is much broader than that. If we determine that a supplier diversity program is the way to go, then we'll create working groups so we can dig in all this. Angela.
Oh, sorry, not intended to have my hand up. Sorry about that.
Okay. So that is. Increase local firms that provide goods and services the city needs. Next up is, let me put it in the chat. And again, we'll create a Word doc on this. I just didn't have time to put it all together before the meeting. Procurement 101 was a vehicle for a while. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so increase local contractors that work as general contractors and subcontractors on major projects in Evanston. So the one of the strategies that I mentioned is will probably be no surprise to this group, but Northwestern is working on an $800 million construction project. They're going to build a new stadium. They're going to demo the existing stadium and build a new one. And they have a commitment to support NWEB businesses to the tune, I think, of about $200 million for what I've heard, and it could be even more. My guess is that after change orders and every, other unexpected costs, that this could reach, this could be $1 billion project at Northwestern. And so one of the strategies that we may want to work on for next year is really putting, um, is really taking a lead on making sure and really taking the lead and partnering with Northwestern to ensure as many Evanston and minority-owned and women-owned businesses get opportunities, and really taking that up as a challenge to this committee to partner with Northwestern and make sure that happens, and happens in a way that makes an impact on Evanston businesses especially. So that's a strategy that we can decide to take up for next year. So that's the most obvious one. Trying to see if I had some other notes about that. Um, help to launch a training center that will address the labor shortage by creating a pipeline for laborers into the trades. I held a meeting not too long ago with some of our NWEB contractors in Evanston, especially in the building trades, and they said there's a labor shortage, that they themselves would love to train people and bring on younger, especially talent, but that the pipeline isn't there, and the laborers aren't there. And Rebuilding Warehouse is one organization that has recently mentioned that they would like to take on this challenge of creating a training center, a physical space to train and develop workers to address the labor shortage, especially in the building trades. And again, so if that's a strategy that we want to take on, then we can work with Rebuilding Warehouse and other partners to figure out how to address that. Bonaventure, I saw your hand went up and then it went down. Did you have a comment or question?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Michael.
So, I'd love to hear from the warehouse how they're doing with the expanded space. We gave them $100,000. I think 50 may have been ours directly, and 50 was from economic development. But they expanded their facility to have a workshop, have an OSHA training classroom, or like an audio visual training classroom, and a meeting room in their space. And they were expanding their program from there. I'd love to get them back here just for kind of a report on how that is going, because that was always the goal. It was like, they were really teaching mostly young men to be employable, right? And a skill of deconstruction. This was supposed to give them the ability to start a role of construction and training to do basic carpentry and basic tools like that. To hear that they're interested in going beyond that is fantastic, and that's what we always hoped. But I think we should invite them for kind of an update to the whole group to hear about how the investment has gone so far, and where they may want to, what it means to take it to that next level. Because as an entity, they've demonstrated commitment, but it would be nice to see some outcomes and really just hear what they are.
Yep, that's a good point. And I know they would love to do that too. So that's a great point. Ernest.
Do you want me to reach out to Ina to ask her?
I can reach out. I can reach out to Ina. I want to see where we go with this first, and I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they'll naturally come up once we decide what we want to do moving forward. But no, I can reach out to Ina.
Yeah. I mean, even aside from these goals, it's been like 2 years since we awarded them the money.
Just for a second,
So, I mean, like, I think it's time to hear some outcomes.
Yeah, we'll have them. I'll make sure I schedule them. We'll see if we can have them for the next meeting.
Yeah,
I can reach out to Ina. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ernest. Everybody looks like they raised their hand, and then it's
I'm sorry. When we're identifying training per se, are we just looking at setting up a program to train laborers, or are we trying to set up a program to train subcontractors to prepare and having a bigger role in some of these opportunities at this point? How to formally get insurance, structure their business, if they can financially support the contract, how to do that, how to separate personal credit from business credit, how to get all these things in place so when that opportunity is there, they're ready. Is that what we're looking to do, or what exactly?
I think again, I left the goals as broad as I could. So I think that absolutely will fall under increased local contractors that work as general contractors, subcontractors on major projects in Evanston. I think we, whatever working group takes that on, if we decide to take that goal on, could determine all of the ways that we can meet that outcome. And yeah, what you just described, I think is another way to do it. And we have to decide as a group not only how many goals we want to take on, but how many strategies. Obviously, out of each strategy comes a bunch of objectives or tasks that need to be accomplished. And so that's what this is about. I think everything that we can come up with is a great idea and needs to happen at some point. The question will be, how much do we want to take on for the end of this year into next year? And I think we'll probably base that on how much work we think is involved in each one and understanding, the amount of time that we have to work on this. One of the other things I wanted to talk about at the end, which we will, is, do we think our meeting frequency is enough? Should we meet more frequently, especially as we begin to take on more work? Maybe we do that for the, remainder of the year, and then we check back in next year, or we keep things the same as on the same schedule and meet and check in next year. So these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about today, which we can make decisions about it at future meetings. But absolutely, Ernest, I think that's a good point. Okay, so the last one I have on here is develop long-term planning documents that help to establish and address the needs of the NWEB committee. So again, I think we can come up with programs, which I talked about. One, the supplier diversity program. I think also what was mentioned in the resolution that created this committee, in the outline responsibilities, was this idea that the committee could also come up with long-term planning documents. So I think the question is, like, how much do we want to focus on just getting to work, identifying strategies and objectives and going after it and coming up with programs based on kind of our knowledge of what's needed? Or do we really want to sit down and develop long-term planning documents that guide us for the next, 5 years? And so that's, a goal that we can decide to take on. We can say, what, at this point, we want to, we just want to identify things that we can do, get it in front of us and get it done. Or we can say, what, we'll take on some of these goals just to, create a foundation. But then, yeah, we want to spend, a portion of our time working on kind of a planning document that helps us get from here to where we want to go. So that was the last goal. And again, under these goals could be a whole bunch of different strategies, but these are just kind of broad goals that we can think about. And let me see if there was anything else. I think that was it. So those are the goals. And again, we'll pop that up on a Word document. I went over, some of the strategies that we could look into. There are others. I'm trying to find them so I can read them off. Researching and establishing a mentor protege program between NWEBEs and established firms. That was something that was listed off in the resolution as one of the possible responsibilities of the NWEB committee. So that may be one of the strategies that can go under the goals that we went through. I saw it said identifying additional technical and financial assistance resources for the NWEB community. I think that relates at least somewhat to what Ernest just mentioned. So that's one of the responsibilities that was listed off in that resolution that may become a strategy. And I think that was really it. Everything else we kind of talked about. So yeah, just want to open it up at this point to see how we're feeling about these goals. Do we want to, and we don't have to answer all this today, but I want people to think, do we think we can develop one or two strategies under each goal and take it all on next year? Are there some goals that we want to say, what, let's push this, let's park this you know, until the next time we review this, and let's really focus on these goals. How do people feel? Michael.
Thanks. Yeah, so I want to first ask a question, because it seems as if we monitor and collect the fines, and it's a substantial amount of money every year. But it's I've always had this kind of feeling like, but we weren't supposed to use it, and we kind of reactively like give it out to people and businesses when like some emergency comes up, like during COVID. We did have, you know, small business support. We contributed to some of that support. We contributed to the Rebuilding Warehouse to greatly expand their program. But there was no plan of action, right? That it's kind of like, oh, we have this money and we don't know how long we can keep it. And at some point a couple of years ago, the city had accidentally taken all of it and spent it somewhere else. I think they gave it back eventually, but we have $60,000, you know, so I'm just wondering if it's legal, if we're authorized, if we have control over this money, can we utilize it to fund creating a new website with search tool, type technology, not just like an info page? Can we organize a survey of our local businesses, or work with Northwestern, who had already been doing surveys of our MBE businesses, and really formalize some of it? Like, do we have access to that money and to put towards these tools?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. So I think it was at the last meeting, or it might have been the meeting before, but I have requested a legal opinion from our corporation counsel, and at the time it was our acting corporation counsel, Counsel Price. And one of the questions was, I asked our corporation counsel if he could look back at the ordinance or resolution or whatever it was that authorized that created the LEP penalty fee fund, and determine what the eligible expenditures were. And what he said is, as long as it advances our LEP and NWEBE goals or responsibilities, really at this point is all we have, then but soon to be goals, then it would be considered an eligible expense, which essentially means we can spend it on everything, a bunch of different things, including everything that you mentioned. Because one of the examples I gave him was, hey, can we use this money for a website? Which he said yes. So yes to what you're saying. We have access to the money. Tammy, I believe, provided an update on how much is in the fund, and there is a lot of flexibility on how we can use it. Angela.
I would just, I think the goals are overall excellent. I think that we should definitely narrow our focus and have a few great successes, and then expand into long-term planning, because I think that success will start to show us further potential.
Yep.
And that we don't want to plan for the long term when we are really kind of just getting out of the gate and we're not really sure where all this could go from here. And it's a pretty heavy lift, are the things that we're talking about. That's one. The other just logistical question I have about us doing a working document is, my recollection is that like text messages, like if everyone were involved in a text message, that would be a violation of open meetings. Is commenting on a Google Doc
that's absolutely true. I forgot about that. I keep forgetting about that. Yeah. So what I would do though, instead of a Google, and what Angela, and sorry for cutting you off, but basically it would be considered an Open Meetings Act violation if we were all contributing to a Google Doc. And so what I will do though is I can send we can send a document out separately, just an attachment in an email with everything we've discussed today, as well as some possible strategies, as well as any other information we want to send out. So that's a good catch, Angela. Thank you.
And we could do smaller groups, like you said, as long as it was small enough. So we could divide up and each work on one of these initiatives with some more specific things under it, bring it back to the next open meeting where
Correct.
it's publicized and without being in violation. So maybe
Correct. Yeah.
that would be a
We had started doing that. We lost a little momentum, but yeah, there was a kind of a subcommittee that talked about the warehouse and the workforce development. There was a subcommittee of three of us, I think, at any one time, that talked about trying to get more business into the parks to feed off the tourism of the parks. So it worked well, and it gives everybody the opportunity to kind of pick a passion, because
Exactly.
we all work on the same thing. So I think it's a great idea to have subcommittees that each pick one of these things, and at least to have a brainstorming session. That the three people that are on one or on the other kind of come together, come back to us and say, okay, kind of, we thought about this. Here's our ideas on what we would suggest we focus on this goal.
Yep.
Another group would say this goal, and so on. It could be very efficient to do it that way.
Yeah. So, and I have to look at how many people could serve without kind of triggering the Open Meetings Act. I need to check on that with legal. I know some of our other committees, the limit is actually 2. So for our Finance and Budget Committee, it's only 2 members can meet at a time. And just based on the size of this committee, it's probably the same thing. It probably is going to be restricted to 2 people. But we'll get confirmation on that question. And yes, absolutely. Like this, in order for a work plan to work, a big part of it is assigning responsibility. And again, to me as the chair, to Tammy as the city staff person, but also to each and every one of us. And so it won't work without that. So, so even now, I'll follow up on this through email, but based on the goals that we've talked about so far, and possible strategies, but again, we can come up with different strategies. Are there any goals that people want to take on? And not to say we're gonna, I think in this next phase, really what I would love to see is let's see if we can get 2 people per goal if possible. And that may not be the case. Maybe we have one that kind of Tammy and I can work on if people don't, we'll see how it works out. But what I would like to do is just come up with some strategies for each goal, and then those working groups kind of think about how much time and what the commitment would look like in order to and come up with strategies and maybe even some objectives, and figure out how much time and effort will go into accomplishing those things. And then we can come back as a committee, talk through all of the different goals and some of the strategies and objectives that those working groups have come up with. And from there, figure out which goals and strategies we want to pursue. Because we got to understand, like, using Northwestern as an example, it's easy to say, hey, we want to partner with Northwestern to make sure that they accomplish their local hiring and NWEBE goals. But what does that really mean and look like? And so the working group might want to reach out to Peter Braithwaite, who's working on that, Dave Davis and others, to understand, what they're currently doing, if there's a role that we can play. So they may want to dig into that a bit more to really figure out how much we can do, how much impact we can make, and how much work would be required. I think somebody was Michael. I don't know if you were going to say something. I heard somebody start speaking and then stop. Did you have some, Michael?
No, but I'm happy to work on that.
The NU one? Okay.
I'm in real estate development
and
and construction. So if we're talking about, kind of trying to infiltrate and make sure we're represented there, it's something I'm very familiar with. So I'm happy to work on that if the committee wants.
Yeah, no, it's up to you. So I have you down. You're our first kind of working group. We'll call it volunteer. I'll have you under the increasing local contractors, and general contractors, or local general contractors and subcontractors on major projects in Evanston. So increasing local contractors that work as general contractors and subcontractors on major projects in Evanston. We also could expand that to also be people that aren't necessarily considered contractors, but again, they provide services and could provide other services to, you know, Northwestern during this construction, so we can expand it. But Michael, you're our first volunteer for that. Is there anybody else that wants to work on that? We'll go to I don't know who's hand up first, but I'm gonna go to, we haven't heard from Bonaventure in a while, so let's go Bonaventure first.
Yes, I would like to work on the increased local farm that provide good and services to city need.
Okay.
Because I believe in that goal, and I believe that change can be, be made through that goal. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bonaventure. Appreciate it. Ernest.
Jared was before me.
Jared.
I was just going to say that I can be part of the committee that works on developing and maintaining the directory.
And I would be willing to join that group as well.
So the directory, I'm glad y'all mentioned that. So I need people. If y'all have the time, and I'm glad you brought that up. So we almost need volunteers. And again, Tammy and I can take on some of this too, especially the things that we absolutely have. I think we need to do in order to effectively do this work. But I need people to take on the goals, and then also the other stuff that we talked about earlier. So are there any goals, Jared or Chrissy, that you think you want to take on as well?
So just to clarify, does that goal really kind of fit under the first one, or does that strategy or tactic really fit under the first goal of positioning the committee as a leader for advocacy, or is that more increase local firms that provides goods and services?
It's a good question. I'm not sure.
Probably the second one, increasing local firms, because that's where you would want to know one of the strategies that you might increase local firms doing these things is to build a directory.
That would be the first step. Yes, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we just need, and I'll check this, but for now, let's go off of the understanding that 2 per goal. So I heard you first, Jared, unless you want to allow Chrissy to get in on that.
Council member takes precedence over this.
Okay, Councilmember Harris, then it's to you. Are you okay with working with Bonaventure on increasing local firms that provides goods and services the city needs? I don't know if you're muted or not. Councilmember Harris, can you hear me? Is she muted? I can't. I'm on my phone. Is she muted?
Yes, she's muted.
Can we see her? I can't see her because I'm on my phone. I don't know how to see video. Okay, we'll go back to Councilmember Harris. I'll reach out to her separately. Ernest.
Well, I'm interested in increased local contractors that work, and then also website development.
Okay, and that is true. If folks want to get on more than one working group, you can. So position. Okay, so position. I'll put you under position Evanston's NWEB committee as a leader in NWEB advocacy in Evanston, and then you also said you're down to work on
increased local contractors that work as general contractors.
Work as general subcontractors. Perfect. So we'll have Ernest and Michael on that. We have Bonaventure, and for now, we'll say Councilmember Harris, but I'll talk to her later if she doesn't.
I'm sorry. I missed some. What I missed? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. So we determined that working on a directory falls under the increasing local firms that provide goods and services the city needs. So
Okay.
would you be okay working with Bonaventure on that in the working group?
Yep.
Okay,
That's
perfect. And Jared, I know you mentioned the websites and what you're working on with Clarence and others. So do you want to work with Ernest on positioning Evanston's NWB committee as a leader in NWB advocacy in Evanston? That goal.
Yeah,
That's cool. Okay,
that goes right along with it. Yeah, thank you.
perfect, beautiful.
Can I just make a quick just suggestion?
Yes,
that
sir.
In addressing these goals as our first go with pairing off here, we hopefully will be open to them morphing, and they may move around a little bit, and we may kind of have, kind of subtopics come out of these conversations that maybe may start in one goal, but maybe go to another team, and vice versa. If we spend a month talking about this together, separately, and then come back and report what we've kind of looked at and what we've uncovered, that these things all can kind of like reconfigure and break up again after our first dig into it.
Yeah, I guess
and I'm
this
feeling like
organization.
maybe I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
go
feeling
ahead.
maybe like if they scaffold and if we have this Google document that we all have access to, that we can be looking at that as we're all working together and seeing where we're overlapping and what makes sense, So again, having that master document where everybody's putting that information together so that we say, oh, yep, that kind of ties in over here, goes there.
So we Councilman Harris, we talked about this. You might have been off on this part, but Angela May reminded me that they consider Google Docs towards the kind of open meetings threshold, where if it's so many people working on even a virtual document, that will trigger the Open Meeting Act, which will require us to publicly notice it, etc. So instead, I think what we need to do is, or what we'll do is just have the working groups, and then we can, as Michael said, we can meet back and check on it. I would say, and also this is somewhat complicated, but not really. But we also, if like, let's say Tammy and I had access to the Google Doc, and everybody else could just view it, and we can update it as people send information in. We also might be able to get away with doing it that way. And I could check with our corporation counsel just to make sure. So that's another way, Councilmember Harris, to your point, where at least if everybody can view the updated document, that hopefully that would still help, but it wouldn't violate the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, look into that, Bobby, to see if maybe even if it's in a Google Drive, as long as we're not all in there at the same time, that might, but the council will be able to let us know. Thank you.
Yeah, I will look into that. I think Ernest had his hand up, and then down. You have a question or comment, Ernest, before we go to Angela?
No, I'm sorry, my cursor scrolled over.
Oh, no worries. Angela.
It looks like you have 2 people on every working group, and I think you are correct that you can't have a majority of a quorum. You can't have a majority of a quorum, which for the size of this committee, I think is 3. So that limits you to 2 being able to get together at the same time. So since you already have people on all of your working groups, I would be happy to just sort of help with the organization of all of the data that comes in from all of this great work. If you need it.
No, we need it. We definitely need it. Let me see. Let me look at some of the other things we talked about earlier, and then we're gonna close soon because it's about to be 7:20. But let me look at some of the other stuff we talked about. Things we should definitely do: development, maintaining the directory, create status reports, find assess the needs, and then we can survey review. I think even, and I don't know if you would be interested in this, Angela, but the identify and assess the needs the NWB committee on a regular basis that's thinking about that survey, because I think we're all in agreement that having some type of survey, on a regular, on some regular basis would be helpful.
Mhm.
And so even that, I think if that was something that you were willing to take on, as well as if Ernest wouldn't mind giving up his slot on the first one, position Evanston's NWB. If that's something that you wouldn't mind working on, we also can do that. It's up to you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And that kind of falls, I think that the identifying and assess the surveying kind of falls under that.
Under that, okay, let's do that then.
So
Ernest, is that okay? We're gonna
Now say that again. I apologize.
So basically we're gonna have Angela under the first one, positions Evanston's NWEB, because we ran out of volunteer opportunities. And then, but we'll keep you at you'll be working with Michael on the increased local contractors. And of course, once we get back to, this is only the working groups. Once we get back to discussing this in our regular meeting, we'll all be able to, provide feedback and even as Michael said, as you're discussing these goals in your working group and coming up with possible strategies, you can think about other goals as well. What I will say from an organizational standpoint, please think about the goal itself, though, that you're working on, the very specific goal, and come up with very specific strategies and also objectives. And then if you have any thoughts about any other goals, please keep that separate. Just so it's easier for me to come back and kind of organize and manage our next meeting. Again, just keep that separate. So it's okay if you kind of delve into other goals and topics, but take notes on a separate document for anything that's outside of these goals and that you've been that you volunteered to think through. And then on another sheet, very specifically, hey, based on this narrow goal, here's a very specific strategy that we think will work, and here's some of the objectives that might come out of that. And even for the next meeting, if we just get to strategies, I think that's fine. If you can come up with objectives too, even better. But I don't want folks to feel like they need to do too much work, because at the next meeting, once we know the strategies and we could talk a little bit about objectives, then we need to decide, okay, are we going to tackle all of these goals and strategies, or are we just going to focus on 2 or 3 goals or 1 goal or whatever it is? I think we only have 3 goals, but 1 goal, 2 goals, or all 3 goals, and 1 strategy in each one, 1 in one, 2 in the other. Like, we still have to have that discussion. So don't feel like you got to dig too deep into it before our next meeting. Okay, so that's all I have. Again, I will share this out in for now in an attached document in an email, and then let me just make sure I know what legal kind of questions we have before we go. You want me to check to see if we can do like a view only share doc? There was something else that I said. There was some other question that we needed to ask council, I think. Does anybody remember? It was the view only. Do we have anything else?
was it just the number of people that can gather
Yeah, there it is. Number of people
based on the size of our committee? Yeah.
gather based on size of committee. Yeah, I'm like 99% sure we're limited to 2, just because this is like the same size of finance and budget, but I'll make sure that and either way, it seems like everything worked out in terms of we have 2 on each goal. Okay, that's all I have. Does anybody have any other thoughts and comments? When is our next meeting, Tammy?
Probably not till December, right?
I thought it's every 3rd Wednesday.
But that will be Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Then it's in December.
That would be.
Angela, also, if you have any,
Maybe Tammy's muted.
I'm still muted.
You're not muted, but we can't hear you as well. I don't know if the mic turned away from you or something.
Okay. Our next meeting is November 16th. That will be the last one scheduled for the year. We don't meet in December.
Okay, November 16th. That's perfect. So we'll meet on the 16th, and we can report back. Angela, did you have something else?
Just one last question. When
Yeah.
you send out this recap of what our work groups are working on and who's on our work groups, could you also include a definition of a strategy versus an objective so that we know exactly what we're looking for?
For sure. Yeah, I'll provide some definitions and then also some examples. So I gave a few, like Northwestern could be a strategy. Once you get off of um like the really broad goals, I think most things could be seen as a strategy, but we'll try to provide some definitions. I'll write that down as a note. Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Before I wanted to go into a few last things before we split, but any other questions, comments? Okay. So the in between meetings, just think about, and it seems like we're okay, but I wanted to think about, like, is the day and time of day that we meet okay for everybody? I think at the beginning of the committee, we probably went over that and everybody decided this is the best time, but it's still worth checking in every once in a while. You know, our schedules may change. And so if there's enough of us that this isn't work this time and time of month and time of day isn't working for, then we might be able to make some adjustments. For now, we'll keep everything the same, but just keep that in the back of your mind. If that's something that you want to bring up to me, just let me know. And then also, again, as we get into goal setting and coming up with different strategies, if we think we should meet more often, we can do that. I think once a month is probably fine as long as we're consistently meeting as working groups, but we can determine that as a committee. I think I had maybe one other thing, and the time of day we meet. I think that was it. And then the last thing is just I wanted to talk a little bit about LEP funds, but Michael brought it up, so we kind of already went over it. That we do have $60,000. At one point, I was going to say, hey, how do we think we should use those funds? I think once we come up with the different strategies, objectives, etc., it's going to cost some money, right? Whether if we do a website, survey, development, etc. So what's great, and Michael brought this up, that we do have money that can fund whatever ideas we come up with off of this work plan. So okay, so next meeting November 16th. Tammy and I will work on sending a Word attachment out. I'll work on getting some of these questions answered from our corporation council. If you have any questions in between meetings, just let me know. Hopefully everybody can get at least one, maybe two, however many meetings you need, scheduled with your partner in between meetings before the 16th. And like I said, I'll make sure we get all that attachment out with definitions and some of the examples of example strategies. Okay. I'm going to call one more time for public comment. We did have a public comment period at the beginning. I'll offer another opportunity, one last opportunity for anybody to make public comment, any member of the public to make a public comment.
No, I just wanted to say, if Jared and Angela need some information in reference to websites, design, and development, is what I do. So be happy to give you guys information.
Perfect. Thanks, Ernest. Okay, everybody. We're 8 minutes. We're supposed to get out at 7:20, so we're doing great on time. But thank you, everybody, for finding some time to meet, and really excited to get to work with you. And we'll convene again November 16th. Okay.
Amen.
All right, everybody.
Thanks, Bobby.
Have a good
Everybody
night.
have a good evening.
Thank you.
Too.
Welcome, Council Member Chrissy Harris.
Thank you, Jared.
Everybody have a good night.
All right, take care. Tammy, could you stay on for a sec? Thanks. Okay, I'm sorry. I was just removed. I don't know who John Gonzalez is. Do you know who that is?
Yes, that's John from my office.
Oh, tell him my bad. I just removed him. Okay. Is he
the recording. Give me one
Is he
second.
new with the city or he's been here for a while?
Just a little over 3 months.
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so I will send you I'll send you everything I went over, and if you wouldn't mind just working on a a one pager that we can send out. I put in I have all well I'll send it to you. I was gonna say I put all the goals in the chat, but I didn't include the strategies, and then I also put it, but I didn't put in some of the other things that we want to work on. So I'll make sure I get that all to you in an email, and then if you can come up with a document with like a nice, simple but header NWE committee, work plan document or whatever, you can give it whatever title makes sense, and um, and I'll also send you kind of what the pairings were for each working group, and the examples, and then if you could find some definitions for strategies and objectives to include, that would be helpful. And I think that is it. Yeah, I think that's it. And then maybe just a reminder on it that we would like people to meet, once or twice before November 16th, that we want them to work on very specific strategies and if they have time, also think through objectives for each strategy. And and again, we want them to, maybe we tell them we want them to send in their responses no later than, and give it a date that makes sense, maybe a week in advance of the meeting, or
Okay.
I think a week in advance gives them enough time.
Yes.
So let's say a week in advance, so that so that everybody can review some of the responses, and be ready to discuss them on the 16th.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'll send that to you. What's today? Yeah, I'll send that to you before the. I'll try to get it to you tomorrow, because it'd be nice, if possible, to get everybody something by Friday or Monday at the latest, just so we can keep the momentum going. And then I'll have to. I think we were only missing. So we were missing Devon, and we were missing Chrissy. I'm sorry, Kimon. Was there anybody else?
No, I think that was it.
Was that it? Okay. So I will. I'll try to think of something that Devon and Kimon can work on. That is. Well, I'll either figure out something they can work on, or they'll both be present at the next meeting, I'm sure, and we'll have to rethink working groups at that point anyway. So I think we're fine for now. But the main thing is I wanted to make sure that we were only missing 2 people, so that's helpful to know. And then for next meeting on your end, we'll have another report, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I have another report, and I think that is it. Cool. So I'll send you everything by tomorrow. Let's try to get it out. If I'm able to get it to you by tomorrow, let's try to get some out by Friday or Monday at the latest. And that's it. That's all I got. Okay. Thank you, Tammy. You have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye-bye.